Hey friends, I'm Teresa Morris and welcome to Friends Talking Education. Please leave a rating for Friends Talking Education on the platform you are listening on, and don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. Today's episode is Digital Citizenship. Nicole Baselice is a middle school career technology education teacher and instructional coach in Central Florida. Since entering the field of education in 2001, she has taught high school English, middle school language arts, preschool, and elementary school. Nicole is passionate about exploring best practices for implementing technology in the classroom. She is a level 2 certified Google education trainer and implements Google apps into her classroom. Nicole founded Ultimate Tech Time, a company that provides training and technology education for people of all ages. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, Teresa. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so thrilled to have you here with me today. What initiated your love for learning and education?
Well, Teresa, I was always the child who was playing school, teaching my dolls lessons, reading them stories, and had a chalkboard that my mom had given me. A chalkboard, in case listeners don't know, is a piece of slate that you wrote on with chalk, not like our whiteboards today. And I just always so excited about going to school. And I think a lot of that had to do with being in front of some really great educators, especially in my high school years. That was when I had the most inspiration. And that's when I knew in my heart that education was the career path for me.
Do you happen to remember what teacher inspired you the most during high school?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Mr. Brady, my high school English teacher. And I remember one particular assignment where he had us write a paper about a big epiphany that we had. And I remember it being this really emotional process, about really reflecting on what is a big epiphany for a 15-year-old. And mine happened to be driving over a bridge for the very first time. And I remember him just guiding me through that whole experience. And I still have that paper to this day. And I still keep in touch with Mr. Brady as well.
There has been an evolution of technology in the classroom, from the first use of the chalkboard, in which you mentioned, which came around in 1890, to having computers in the hands of every student. The first personal computer was introduced in 1981 and it weighed 24 pounds. Until now, we have students, or everyone, walking around with a computer in their pocket. We want to talk about meaningful technology integration in the classroom so that students can use this technology in a meaningful way. Because our students now will never know life without a cell phone or computer. They've come up with the term digital native. Nicole, tell us, what is a digital native?
A digital native, by definition, is a person who is born or brought up during the age of digital technology and therefore familiar with computers and devices and the internet from a very early age. So basically, all of the students that we have in our classroom are considered digital natives. However, I think that term, we have to be careful with it, because just because you are a digital native and you are brought up during this digital age, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are tech savvy.
Interesting.
So students who are using these devices, they may not really understand how they work, what the risks are, how they can use the technology to help them with their learning, etc. That is kind of an important bridge to build when we're talking about how to implement technology into the classroom.
That is so interesting that you use the words that they are not tech savvy, because we understand that it is important to teach our students to remain safe while using their technology. What are some solutions that are taught in school to help with that home to school connection and to build that bridge of students becoming tech savvy?
Well, I think the first and foremost, it's just like anything that we do with our students is we have an opportunity to model appropriate use at home and in the classroom. So what a lot of schools and teachers will do is they'll just prohibit the use of technology at all. And they'll just build up that wall. Like we just want to make it safe and build that fortress. But a lot of people believe that what we can do is kind of build like a half wall. So, kind of a protective sandbox environment for our students where we can model appropriate use of technology, teach them how it can redefine what they're learning, and then gradually, slowly release them out once they have the responsibility that they need to enter this massive digital world. And it takes some time and it takes some practice. Even adults and parents need to educate themselves and teachers about what are the guidelines and what is the framework that we can use to make sure that we're using technology for its best purposes and also keeping safety in mind.
So, what we're talking about is students becoming a digital citizen.
Yes, absolutely. And it's never too early to start modeling this behavior. We can almost think about a digital footprint like a credit score, something that that follows you and that employers, colleges, high schools are starting to search. Many students have social media profiles that they're not really thinking about what they're posting or the content that they're seeing, not thinking about what they're downloading and the potential risks involved with that. So luckily, a lot of schools are keeping in mind what is safe, what does not require personal information, also doesn't risk the infrastructure of our school. So I would encourage educators to especially look to their district or to someone for a list of those resources, and that's a really good place to start because they've done all the hard work for you. They already know that they are vetted and safe pieces of technology to use in the classroom.
Parents could have access to those lists as well to be aware of what programs collect what information about their students or even about themselves if they're on those particular websites.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of times, oftentimes, we will just click agree. Like nobody ever really reads the Apple iTunes agreement, but
Yes.
there's really important legal information in there, especially in social media sites as far as age limits, location tracking, and things like that.
Nicole, how do we define using technology in the classroom?
Sometimes it's overwhelming to think about, okay, how am I going to bring this technology into my classroom to improve my practice and to improve learning? And what I found is it's useful to have a framework kind of to help you structure how you're going to implement technology into the classroom. And luckily, there is one already developed out there by a professor, Dr. Ruben Puntadura, and it's called the SAMR model, SAMR, and it's one of those acronyms that we love so much in education.
Yes.
But the SAMR model provides a framework for meaningful technology integration, exactly what we're talking about today. So would you like to hear about what each letter stands for?
Yes, please.
Okay. So substitution is the first level. So that's the letter S. So that really means that technology is acting as a direct substitute, one thing for another, with no functional change. For example, using a Kindle or an e-reader instead of a book. So really just substituting one thing for another. So that's kind of the lowest level of technology integration. And it's also recommended that, you know what, if you're just kind of getting started, that's just perfectly fine if that's where you want to start, dipping your toes into the water and using technology in your classroom. The next letter is A, and that's augmentation. So that means that technology is acting as a substitute, but with a little functional improvement. So the best example I could give for that is say you're using a word processing software, Microsoft Word or Google Docs, and a little functional improvement, like you can use text to speech, or you can use spell check, or you can use an online grammar tool, or something like that. So it's taking a substitution, just adding a little bit to it. When we move on to M and R, that's really when we're transforming how we're using technology in the classroom. M is modification. So that sits in when the technology allows for significant task redesign. So that means that now we can use a document and now the teacher can give feedback. Now, if we're using a Word document, students can collaborate and write together and edit each other's work and provide comments. So now we're really taking that tool and harnessing that power for collaboration in a way that we couldn't have done before. Even students who are not in the same classroom or the same class period can participate in that type of modification. The highest level is redefinition. And that just means technology allowing for new tasks and new opportunities that were previously inconceivable. And that really includes like multimedia, video, podcasts, all different ways for students to show their learning. And this piece really emphasizes that collaboration, classroom to classroom, teacher to teacher, student to student to expert. There are a lot of authors and scientists who are ready to connect with students and share their expertise with them. And that's something that would be previously very difficult to do. So using all of these tools to really enrich student learning and actually make them subject matter experts on what they're learning about. We don't have to get to redefinition the first day. It's a gradual process. But as we're trying to elevate our practice and think about, like, how can we use the tools that we have, that's goal to get to. How can we do something that could have never been possible 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago with the technology our students have?
You know, Nicole, that sounds very interesting. And it really reminds me of STEM, like how
Yes.
we integrate STEM into the classroom. And a lot of people think of STEM as each individual word: science, technology, engineering, math, but it's
Right.
all part of the integration of what you're using and allowing the students to come to an understanding and mastery of the standard that they're working on using the
Exactly.
different types of technology that are available to them.
Exactly. And opening up that information and giving them access to information in a good, positive way, which we want to make sure our students are trying to find the good parts and the good information and connecting with experts and going on virtual field trips and virtual college visits. And like Skype, for example, has virtual field trips, providing opportunities to students that maybe have never been to a beach or seen the ocean to be able to experience, the sights and sounds, things like that. I think it's a real opportunity if we just take a few minutes to find those ways to bring that technology into our classroom and inspire our students too. Kind of give them the tools and see what they do with it. So this is another way where we can encourage students to own their own learning and collaborate with one another.
Because it is quite important for our students to have those collaborative skills, because that's how a lot of businesses are working now. Everyone is not in the same room together.
Exactly. And that is what redefinition is really all about. It's giving students those future ready skills like collaboration and participation. And those are just essential for a modern workforce. And also, we have to teach them that the answers aren't always right there. You might have to look for them. You might have to ask someone else who is an expert in the field. You might have to find some information another way. You might have to problem solve. Dr. Puntadura calls this kind of collaboration gateways to each other's knowledge. And I love that because that is what they are going to need when they go into the workforce, no matter what they do. We're going to find gateways to each other's knowledge, and that's going to help you become a lifelong learner.
I love that because, we as educators, we've had to change the way we look at education so that it's not as linear as it used to be. And
Exactly.
we then integrate all of the new technologies and the new learning in order to provide students with those opportunities to work with one another and learn from one another and take ownership of that learning. We know it as Bloom's
Yes.
taxonomy. And
Yes.
it's all about those cognitive skills that help teachers teach students and thinking beyond what is right there in front of them.
Exactly. And I love connecting Sandler to Bloom's taxonomy because the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy is really that piece where our students are taking what they learned and taking what they know. And then what they're doing is they are creating, evaluating, applying, analyzing. And they can do all of this in that redefinition stage with technology as well.
Okay, Nicole, I'm a classroom teacher. I have this lesson ready to elevate my practice by incorporating computer technology and still have a rigorous, meaningful lesson. How can I do this? And can you provide me with an example?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with a very simple example. Just something that is very common in the classroom, like a paper, a handwritten paper. Okay, so your students are given a topic and we ask them to research and write. So if we're going to use substitution, that would be a word processor replacing the pen and pencil. And we could do that for a lot of reasons. It's neater, it can help accommodate students, and maybe we just start there. If you want to move up to the next level, augmentation, so now we're using this word processor and text to speech. Now we're going to use that online grammar help or inline research, which is a feature in Google Docs. So that is just a little bit of an elevated way to use that word processing document. If we want to go to modification, we're saying that students can start collaborating with one another. They have access to each other's writing and can provide feedback by using comments right in the document. A student can have a conversation about the document that they're working on. They don't even have to be in the same room. And then for redefinition, instead of just that written assignment, which can be an option, students can also use different multimedia tools like a movie or a podcast, or maybe they're making a photo essay to convey the same learning and the same knowledge as they would in a written paper. So also that piece is that collaborative piece too. And students can be working at home or from different classrooms, or you can have your third period class working with your fifth period class, or you could have a mentor student working with a younger student. Elevating it to that level and providing other ways to show their learning is how you're going to get to that redefinition. But you don't have to do that the very first time. You're like, okay, I want to get in there and I want to start using technology. Start slow and get comfortable with the tools, and then gradually incorporate them at higher and higher levels.
I love it. I really do love it. Integrating technology into the classroom is a skill that students will need to have because we talk about those 21st century skills.
There are so many teachable moments we have for our students
Yes.
and giving them ideas for etiquette, email etiquette. How do we give proper feedback to one another? How do we engage in discourse that is productive? So those kinds of skills are those future ready skills that we're building in while we're learning content, while we're integrating technology. And it just fits in there very seamlessly.
Nicole, how do you translate your love of learning to others?
I think that I just always am trying to learn something new, whether it's a photography class or a cooking class, or I'm trying to figure out how to refinish some furniture. I just think that bringing those experiences to my classroom kind of gives me abilities to connect with my students and model for them that, just because you graduate from eighth grade or graduate from high school, that doesn't mean that you ever stop learning. And I really just try to model that for them in academic and non-academic ways.
Nicole, thank you so much for coming to speak with me on Friends Talking Education.
Thank you so much, Teresa. It's been a pleasure.
And remember to remain RTL, ready to learn, love, and live life. Talk with you again soon, friend.